Meeting in order. Celeste, call the roll.
Case.
Here.
Scottish. Evans.
Here.
Kasserag.
Here.
Lighting.
Here.
Mead. Here. Slivka.
Here.
Stevenson.
Here.
Stocking.
Here.
We have quorum.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Brett.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Next item is approval of minutes, February 22nd, 2018.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next item is a new public hearing for 304 East Side Drive. It's a zoning ordinance map amendment from the R3 medium to high-density single-family zoning district to R7 multifamily residential zoning district. At this time, I will read the procedures we have for the public hearing so everybody's on the same page. We now enter the public hearing portion of the meeting. It is the Plans Commission job to conduct these public meetings in order to receive testimony for and against petitions for the general amendments to the zoning ordinance, zoning map amendments, and zoning text amendments, special use permits and amendments to special use permits. The procedure we will use is as follows. First, the Plan Commission, the Secretary or designated representative will read or describe the written items, reports, and plans into the record. Second, the petitioner will present testimony in favor of the petition and will present any supporting plans or exhibits. Third, the Commission members will have an opportunity to question the petitioner. Fourth, the Commission will receive citizen testimony both for and against the petition. Questions about the proposal may be directed to the petitioner or the petitioner's witnesses, and questions about the Plan Commission process itself may be directed to me. Following such testimony, the petitioner and the Plan Commission may ask for questions of those who testified. Finally, the petitioner may provide a rebuttal to any testimony in opposition. When all the testimony is brought into the record, the hearing will be closed and the Plan Commission will make a recommendation to City Council in a form of motion or motions. In order to give testimony, you must provide your name and address in the registration sheet when we first walked in the door. By signing the registration sheet, you agree that you understand anything you say will be considered sworn testimony and affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. When giving the testimony, please approach the lectern, speak directly into the microphone so that you may be heard. Please begin by stating your name and giving your address. If you speak several times, please state your name each time for the record. Please be concise when presenting your testimony, and if your point has already been made, it is not necessary to repeat it. Each of these points is recorded and will be considered as the Plan Commission develops findings of fact and the recommendation or recommendations. You may provide your testimony in written form, but such written testimony must be presented to the Plan Commission Secretary or designated representative prior to the close of this hearing. After the process is completed and everyone wishing to present testimony has spoken, the Commission will then decide whether it's heard adequate testimony in order to make a decision. If it has, the public hearing will be closed. After the public hearing is closed, the Plan Commission will refrain from receiving any additional testimony either for or against the petition. There is one exception to this rule. City staff will submit a report based on the testimony presented at the hearing. This report will consider comments or concerns from all city departments such as the Fire Department, Public Works Department, or Engineering Department. Okay, at this time I will administer oath to those who have signed the registration form. Anyone wishing to give sworn testimony, ask questions, or cross-examine anyone given sworn testimony, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear to affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you. You may be seated. Paul, what do we have on the record?
All right. The contents of our file is a map amendment application filed by Gary Chompy dated January 24th, 2018, a project narrative and a map amendment standards prepared by the applicant submitted January 24th, 2018, a plat of survey prepared by Todd Surveying dated November 2nd, 2017, a Kane County Road Improvement Impact Fee application dated January 24th, 2018, a land use opinion report prepared by Kane County, prepared by the Kane DuPage Soil and Water Conservation dated January 24th, 2018, a memorandum and staff report from the Community Development Department to the Plan Commission which summarizes the request and provides staff's analysis dated March 8th, 2018, a certificate of publication from the Daily Herald for the legal notice that was published on February 20th, 2018 for tonight's public hearing, and a copy of the notification letter and sworn affidavit stating that the notification letter was mailed out to all property owners within 500 feet of the subject property.
Okay, very good. We'll hear from the petitioner first.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Gary Choppy. Add the confusion, I go by Gary, but my legal name is Stephen. I live at 845 Citizen Avenue in Elburn, Illinois. We are asking for the zoning map amendment for our property at 304 East Side Drive. And we are also known as Michael Vincent Custom Homes in the community of Geneva. We've been building in the community for about the last 8 to 10 years, done approximately about 20 infill homes in the community here. My partner is Michael, and we've taken a look at the East Side Drive property. We made some calls to the community development in regards to the zoning once we looked at the comprehensive land plan use map. We had a conversation with Mr. DeGroot about the property, and thought that we welcome the opportunity to speak to the board about changing the zoning from R3 to R7. We think that it meets a lot of the criterias based on suitability, providing a buffer to some of the residential communities in the area. It's also surrounded by some like-kind properties off of East State Street that have multiple apartments. After our review and due diligence, that's the best use for the property that we came up with, is the idea that maybe we could convert it into 5 apartments. And it has plenty of parking, has multiple garages, and so I think that it would be best suited for that at this time. We would certainly have to meet all of the building engineering requirements that would be put upon us to do that. And again, it was a distressed property, so we think we can enhance the community by refurbishing both the interior and exterior of the property. So I think at that point, size requirements were met as well. And I think that's about all I had as far as, what's that? Yeah, other than, I think I mentioned it was shown R7 on the comprehensive land plan use. So that's how we developed our strategy in our due diligence before we purchased the property. So we've met with both Eric and had a conversation with Dustin, the fire marshal, about what would be needed to improve the property, to bring it up to code. And I think beyond that, that's about our conversation regarding the property. Any questions I can field for anybody?
Brad, do you have any?
At this time.
Michael?
I don't.
I'm interested in what your thoughts are. What are you gonna do with the place? You know, can you just a little bit more specific? I know it's early on, but.
Well, I think, well, it's going to need refurbishing. So when I say we're going to convert it to maybe 5 apartments, it will take refurbishing on the inside. We'll have to add a sprinkling system inside for fire protection. We require a new water line. We intend to replace the windows, redo the siding, redo the decking. You know, if you've looked at some of the properties that we've done in the community, we consider ourselves medium to high-end builders in this community, so there's nothing that we wouldn't do there that we wouldn't do on any of the duplexes or single families that we've added here. Our work can be seen in across from the Burgess Norton factory. We did the 2 unit duplexes there. We did the 2 houses on Garfield, we did the 2 houses on Pine and 38, we did the 2 houses on Howard Street, which is Howard and Dotson, so it's right in that same general area. So that's kind of our goal. And then long range, I can't really commit to now because last time I did a long range plan, I got hurt. So I'm not going to do that again. So if the market stays healthy and everything goes well, we'll talk about it. We'll maybe be back in front of the board again talking about something different that we can do. But at this time, we think it falls in line with what we see in the surrounding area and thought that it was a good idea and that we think we can make it a valuable asset to the community.
Any idea of the style? What's it gonna look like? I mean, I'm not tying it down to anything, just kind of interested in it.
Well, I think at this point, once we start to disassemble the structure a little bit, then I think we'll come back. We work with an architect, and we'll get them involved to come away with a plan. Some of the difficulties in the building have been is that in a distressed property such as it was, one, they shut the water system down. They didn't drain the water pipes, so when we turned it on, there was a lot of split pipes. But, you know, in regard to that, we're gonna take it all apart from the inside and the outside and put better windows in it. Obviously, the windows are an issue. Whether we can cosmetically make it appealing to everybody, you probably can't, you know. It's a structure that has a unique look. So we're gonna try to do the best that we can within that look.
And any idea the configuration of the 5 units? Just
We have some preliminary drawings that we've given to the building department on how we think it kind of lays out. So we're kind of working through that with our fire protection company to make sure that the cost isn't too overbearing, because one of the things that happens in these projects is the further you dig in, the worse it gets. Michael's doing the remodel on South Street by the Havlicek subdivision, and, they bought that house thinking they could keep a couple of walls, and as we tore into it, they couldn't keep anything. We don't think we're at that. We think we have a solid structure, but we also know that there's challenges within the wiring, the plumbing, and heating and air conditioning systems. So and even some of the exterior, we've cleaned up some, but we've certainly got to do a better job of making an appearance, because we want it to be a unit that has, we want it to be a classy unit, we're not looking for anything but that, not, when you drive by, you say it's a reasonably good-looking building, so that's kind of our goal.
Thank you.
Sure.
Cindy?
Well, I live over in that area, and
Okay.
so I would like to see the whole thing gone. I'd like to see a history. And so are you gonna use the, because you have both lots, so my question is, are you gonna be going into lot 5
For,
building into it, or?
no, the structure we're using just the main structure right now, and the 2-car garage will be available for people who rent. There's a, detached 2-car garage, so that will be used for people who rent. And there's an attached 2-car garage at the northern side. So there is a 4-car available garage, plus there's an additional 4 to 5 parking places.
Yeah, but if you have 5 apartments and 4 garages, 4-car garage,
What does that mean? Nobody parks outside? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if I'd wanna park outside.
Yeah,
But,
I think if we do a survey of most of the community apartments, such as Foxwood or any of them, they don't provide garages. Most people park outside, so garage is actually a premium. So, at least in my knowledge. So, if you could get a garage space for $50 as an apartment renter, I think you'd jump at it,
yeah,
especially with the long winters we have.
yeah, definitely.
And if we feel a value to add an additional garage, we might, but we'd have to see how it really works out. I don't think I can commit on something like that at this point, so.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mike?
No, Ron actually had all my questions.
Okay. Brad?
No, I'm good for now. Thank you.
M, nothing?
One question, when did you buy the property?
December 1st was the closing date,
2017?
2017.
Okay, all right. And for staff, there's something in the write-up about, it had been R3, then it had been R7, and since it wasn't used, and maybe I read this wrong, but since it wasn't used as a multifamily dwelling, it reverted back to R3. If we change the zoning and it's not used as a multifamily again for a period of time, could it revert again? Is there, what are the mechanics of that?
The zoning had not changed to multifamily. It was converted to a multifamily unit at one point,
Okay,
and then converted back to a single-family unit. The multifamily unit at that time was under a single-family zoning.
Right.
It was not conforming, so they lost their non-conforming status once it reverted back to a single-family dwelling.
and that's related to some of this additional information we got today as well, some of that history?
There's some zoning history as well that was submitted to the commission. A similar case had been considered by the Plan Commission and City Council in, I think it was 1976, and again in 1995, to change the property from single-family to multifamily. In those cases, the request was denied.
Again, before all of our times and before the comprehensive plan was adopted.
Right, the current comprehensive plan was adopted in 2003.
Right, right.
And saw this as an opportunity to maybe add some multifamily units.
And this is, if they do anything on this site, if it's converted to R7 and they do anything, will that new development, if they stay in the same footprint, would it need to return for any variances? Or is it, because it's existing today, does it get grandfathered, or does it get the benefit of?
The structure today complies with minimum setbacks,
Except for the garage?
except for
right?
the garage, but that would be a non-conforming structure under the zoning. If they were ever to tear the building down and come back for a redevelopment, anything more than 4 units requires site plan review, so that would come
Okay.
before the commission and then ultimately go to the
that's
city
just-
council.
That's just a bridge we cross later if that occurs?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I had.
Yeah, I just want to add, I used to live in the neighborhood. I would have sworn that was a duplex.
Well, if you, I think along with what,
Just saying.
what David was saying, if you know, the carpeting is all up now because everything got saturated and it was nasty, so you can actually see on the floor where they filled in, where they had separation walls.
Yeah,
And so.
So at one
and
time it
with
was,
the
but-
multiple entry and exits, you know, you've got, you know, 2
I just-
front doors, 3 back doors.
drove by it thousands of times and I just never looked for 2 doors, but I says, that's a duplex.
Yeah, well, and,
Yeah, that's
2
what I was-
driveways, big enough structure for 2 units.
I think it had a photo studio in there as
Really?
well. Yeah, there was some memorabilia from a photo studio of some sort. Now, whether that was, as I read into it, it looked like there was, all that area was R1 a number of years ago, then became R3.
Yeah. it's been
And
there a
then
while.
so they may have had this designation where there could be a business as well as some residential space in there. And maybe they tried to take advantage of that, but,
Okay.
again, as we looked around this eastern side of the community, we felt that, you know, the structure met, as David said, most of the requirements for land size, setbacks. Yes, the garage was an issue, but I think if we drove around the city of Geneva, we'd find there's a lot of non-conforming structures. When we did the houses on Howard and Dotson, we did those 2 houses there. The unit directly south of us is a non-conforming duplex. There are 2 families living there. Across the street, going south, 1 more house again, that's a non-conforming, might be 3 families living there. I can't tell you. There's a lot of cars there, that's all I could tell you. You know, there's a new structure that's a 3-unit building. I'm not sure that's a conforming unit as well. But that's not it's not my job. You know, I don't know who polices that and who takes care of that. I have no idea. But I assume Jim does, right? He's the compliance officer, so he looks at that stuff. So.
How many square feet is the current building?
Well, that's a mystery, because part of the basement is like a lookout. So the building is 34 feet wide by 84 feet long. So if you just looked at those dimensions, and they go 3 stories. So my guess is that, and when we talk about these apartments, I am saying that 3 of them will be 1-bedroom efficiency type units that, you know, will just be, you know, a slimmed down version of a kitchen, you know, something that, as I mentioned, I have a brother who's 75 years old, and, you know, it's the kind of unit he's looking for. You know, he can't afford $1,500 a month, you know. It's a little pension, a little Social Security, so $650 to $800 is, you know, and maybe that might be a customer for us. We're just looking for somebody who can pass our standards, pay their rent, and be a good citizen in the community. That's our criteria.
I think accommodating our aging population is a really good thing, so that was a great example, giving them more affordable housing.
Moving in that
the
direction
area.
myself. So,
Okay, anybody else? All right, thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay, anybody here to speak in the public on this item? Yes, sir.
My name is Carl Safanda. I live at 1013 Dunstan Road. I'm here representing my wife, who owns the building at 111 East Side Drive. I've asked the city staff to give you a copy of this document recorded by former Community Development Department Director Michael Donahue. I think it belies the application here. This property has never been R7 ever. And it's been a mess from the beginning. It was built in defiance of the zoning code by Howard Rockefeller, who gave the city just sort of a cock and bull story about how he was going to live there. And it's gotten worse. And I think you have the opportunity to straighten this out a little bit. There's no R7 there. You have 5 apartments going into the place. It's like a rabbit warren inside this building. And the only zoning that I'm aware of it ever having is R1, and it's probably from the 1940s when the Rehm, R-E-H-M subdivision was formed. This document outlining the sort of zoning history is addressed to the present and future owners of the property legally described above, and it's the property we're talking about. It tells you in black and white, very loud, that this was built, the original building permit is for a single-family residence taken out by Howard Rockefeller in 1968. I don't know that he ever intended to have a single-family residence there. He has built this thing with, as you pointed out, these odd garage doors and odd doors all over the place. I would agree with the commissioner who believes it should be torn down, but that's not my province. I'm just here to tell you that they're asking for something that they don't deserve, R7. They could make more money if they have it R7, but that's not what they're entitled to. And it's a checkered history here of people going to the Plan Commission, going to the City Council, asking for R7 and getting turned down each and every time. And I hope you do the same in your actions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this matter?
Good evening. I'm Don Forney, II. I'm here with my mother. We own 2 properties, 323 my mother's in and 329 Park Avenue. I'm 49 years old. I've been coming to the city council meetings for this property ever since I was probably about 10 years old. My father fought this property. It is an albatross. It's horrible, and we don't want to see it be this high-density living, so I just wanted to put that on record. Okay?
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this? No one else? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name's Chris Lloyd. I live at 401 East Side Drive. I'm the owner of the property there. This is my first time here, so I'm a little nervous, forgive me. We've only lived in the community about 3 years. We moved here from out of state, and we really like our area. This property, kind of like everybody else has said, is an albatross. But doing just some research in the local area, I'm not sure. I spoke with the owner. He called me, which was nice. I appreciate that. And I went and visited some of the other properties that he's referenced in the community, and they're beautiful properties. But none of them are high-density properties. They're all duplexes or something of that nature, or single-family homes, which that's a lot different than a high-density 5-unit property. You're talking, and I was shocked following our conversation. He said 1- and 2-bedroom apartments, and here he said efficiency-type apartments. That brings the rent down even further. And I'm really concerned, I have kids in the area, you got a school right there, about low-income type of property renters and that kind of thing, and what that could do to our property values as well as the neighborhood. So, forgive me, I don't know why I'm so nervous. I do this at work all the time, so. But this one's personal, I guess, so maybe that's why. So I'm just really concerned about what that would do to the area. It sounds like residents who've been here a lot longer than me feel the same concerns, so hopefully you guys will listen to that and deny the request. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone? Seconds. Okay, sir, if you wish to comment again, we'll hear from you.
I appreciate everybody's concerns, and one of the things that I would like to, well, a couple of things I'd like to address is, it sounds as if, you can use the term albatross, you can use whatever description you like, and, and I get it that people aren't enamored with the design of the building. I can't change that. Beauty is always in the eyes of the beholder. The improvements, and when I say I can change that, I mean, we'll certainly make it a more desirable to the eye. As far as having much effect, again, when we talk about rents and efficiency apartment, I guess you could use that term, or a 1-bedroom apartment. I guess from the days of when I rented an apartment, a 1-bedroom apartment with another room and a kitchenette was kind of what I considered that apartment. So as far as property values in that general area, I think they've held pretty firm, and I think that when we look at the complex of that general area going from 25 to East Side Drive, there's such a mixed venue of conforming, non-conforming properties that, again, a distressed property enhanced to look better, to be run efficiently, I think only adds to the community. And then lastly, what that owner did in the past with his building permit and the style home he built, we didn't have anything to do with that. We're on the upswing of making it a better property, an asset to the community. We'll do our best to do that, so that's all I'd like to say.
Thank you, sir. Mim.
Question to staff. A major factor here is the fact that the comprehensive plan has this indicated as being multifamily. So some thought went into what might be the best use of that particular piece of property. The neighbors don't seem to be too interested in that particular use. Do you have anything you can enlighten us as to why that was thought to be a future multifamily site?
I think, obviously before my time with the city and Paul's time with the city, but in going through the 2003 comprehensive plan and some of the meeting minutes, much of the same issues we're talking about now, looking for opportunities to diversify our housing stock and opportunities to add density. This site, to many people driving by, looks and reads as a multifamily unit, and it's on the edge of a business district, and those areas on the outskirts of business districts were identified as potential spots for kind of a transitional, higher density residential zoning district to the neighboring single-family districts. So I think that's why the site was identified as a potential multifamily site.
And what is the maximum number of units that he could, I have to admit, I was totally surprised that this wasn't going to be torn down. And I thought, well, that would be a nice thing. It didn't occur to me that the existing building was going to be
We have a minimum
reused.
lot size per dwelling unit, so it allows a maximum of 5 units in this building or a future building.
This site does.
Right.
Yeah, because when I saw it, I was excited. I was like, oh boy, they're gonna get rid of it. And I'm like, no, they're not.
I'd like to stress to the commission that we're not voting on
Right.
the architecture of the building
Right.
or the demolition of the building. The request is the zoning and the use is
Right.
under that zoning appropriate.
So, as an R7, they could put 5 units in here without, and demise it into 5 units without any further city approvals.
Other than meeting the building code and fire code.
Correct.
Correct.
That's
But no
I'm
site
assuming.
plan or anything like that.
Right.
Right.
If the property was torn down and they came back to do anything, they couldn't, I guess if they met minimum setbacks and everything else, that they wouldn't have to come back either for 5.
They would still have to go through a site plan review
Okay, for 5.
For 5.
For 4, they would not. That
for
would-
4 or more.
4 or more. So,
Right.
okay. All right. Do you have any history with respect to the previous denials? I know it was a long time ago.
Just that history that was given to us by Mr. Safanda, it was actually recorded at that
Right.
time in 1995. Apparently, it looks like somebody asked for a history on this whole thing, but
Right.
we've looked through the file and tried to find some other minutes and stuff, other than that. That was a pretty good summary of what happened at the time.
Fortunately, meeting minutes don't go back very far.
Right, and was it a matter of, you don't want the density there, or was this individual who did the development, did he do it in such a way that he built animosity with city staff and others in the community because of the way he behaved, or it's hard to discern that, right? So,
The memo seems to sort of lead that way, that had converted or had more than a single family living in the house, and also seemed to, I don't know, look at the different ones. I don't know.
right. And excuse me for not being crisp on the different zoning classifications, but is there another multifamily zoning classification besides R7 that would allow less density,
We have
but multifamily density?
For multifamily, no, we have the R6 district that would allow a maximum of 3 attached units.
Okay,
But for 4 or more, R7 is our highest density residential district. After that, you have R6, which allows 2 to 3, and R5, which allows duplexes.
so if this had come forward as an R5 or an R6, we could assume that they could not demise this existing building into more than 2 units if it was R5 and 3 units if it was R6.
Correct.
Here they're coming forward asking for the ability to do 4 or 5 units in this existing building.
Right.
So it's fair to debate whether or not we think that level of density is appropriate for this site, correct? As a commission?
Correct.
Okay. If,
That's what's before us.
yeah, I think, yeah, so.
But along those lines, can we only vote this particular request up
Right,
or down.
right.
We can't substitute in an alternative.
Correct.
So if we wanted it to be R5 or
Correct.
R6, we just have to vote
If-
no.
If we felt there was appropriate to have density here, but we felt that 4 or 5 units was too many, we could make the motion and turn it down, and if they elected to, they could come back
could
for an
come back.
R4, R5, or R6. R5 or R6, excuse me.
But does that accomplish what anybody's interested in if the main goal is to get rid of the building? Would
I mean, they could-
anybody in the area be happier if it was 3 units or 4 units?
I don't know that anything we do is gonna determine the future of the building,
No.
you know.
No, we're not supposed
So
to
that,
consider
I think it's just purely land use and density.
Right.
Ron, you had
So,
something?
so how long has this building been on the market?
I don't know, Gary, can,
Approximately 2 years.
2 years as the owner.
So it sat there for 2 years, like this? It was in foreclosure?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm curious, I mean, maybe just for my own information, maybe a show of hands, I guess, but, so, is 2 issues here, so is it the R7 that we're mostly against, and the fact that we could have a density of 5, or is it the fact that, is it the building also? I mean, so if this building was gone and they came forward with a plan saying, okay, here's a gorgeous new, it fits perfect, and it's 5 units, are we fine with that, or is it, I'm just curious what public is thinking.
Wait, excuse me. If you wish to speak, please come forward to the lectern.
I don't know if you're speaking for the entire room, if that's kind of the feel, if you kind of got a temperature gauge before, we started. It's more just curiosity on my side of if this is a two-piece, I guess, argument we have here.
I think we have to separate our feelings on the building from what density we feel is appropriate. And the
Yeah, I
question
think they're two
tonight is,
different
do
things.
we
I think
feel
they're
that as a commission, that we would like to see this building or another building with up to 5 family
I
dwellings?
personally would
on the
just deal
site?
with this without even thinking about the building at all.
Right, exactly.
Like the site doesn't even have a building.
Right.
Yes, sir, did you care to speak?
Well, I just wanted to clarify.
Gary, you need to come to the mic, please.
When we petitioned for the zoning amendment map, we didn't petition on the beauty of the building. That was not part of our petition. Our petition was that the structure was there, the comprehensive land plan use, which I assume took 2.5 years, had some thought process behind it. I'm sure they didn't throw darts at a map and say that's what it should be. So that's the narrative of which I hope we're all working at. I understand the feelings about, if we want to hold a vote on how I spent my money, I don't feel that's the criteria here tonight. The criteria is, I bought the building, okay? I'm asking for a zoning amendment map. That's all I'm asking for. That complies with your comprehensive land plan use. So that was all I wanted to say.
Brad?
Didn't want aesthetics to feed in.
Does the master plan say just multifamily, or does it say R7?
It says multiple family.
So R5, 6, or R7. So we get charged with the
So
density
we get the ambiguity.
issue.
Yeah.
I will say that typically the comprehensive plan would break it out into categories of single-family, attached single-family, which is typically your duplex or townhomes, and then multifamily as being any units 4 or greater that are attached. So that could be a 5-unit townhome building or an apartment building, but again, there's density restrictions underneath our current R7 zoning. At this site, the maximum number of units could be 5 units.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, I just,
Sir, please state your name again.
yeah, I'm sorry, Christopher Lloyd at 401 East Side Drive.
Thank you.
Thanks. And the gentleman in the corner, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Mike?
Mike. You asked the question about what's the concern, the density or the property? Well, it's both, for me. Can't do much about the property, but we can do something about the density today. So, you know, you take a property like this, you divide it up into 4 or 5 units. You know, I rented for a lot of years too. That would not attract me, you know, as someone that would want, I wouldn't want to, that property would not attract me in a 4 or 5 unit. Possibly in a duplex type setting, maybe, if it had enough space for a family and that type of thing. But they're asking for the highest possible density for that space. And, you know, again, like I said, we can't do anything about the building itself, but I think we can do something about the density. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you.
To his point, could it be more than 5 units after we approve this?
Not by the size
Can't
lot.
fit zoning wise.
Oh, okay, right.
Certainly.
Do I have to state my name again?
I think that we'll just continue it.
Okay, just want to make sure. So if he gets the zoning for R7, then that, to the size of the property now, that limits him to 5 units, right? But in the future, if he applies for a building permit to increase that unit and gets approved, he's already got the zoning. Is that a true statement?
No, I'm
Okay.
sorry. He has a maximum of 5 units underneath the requested zoning district of R7.
Okay,
That's determined by the lot area. So,
okay, okay,
in order to go above 5 units, he would have to propose a zoning district that we don't have.
oh, okay.
Or propose an amendment to the zoning district to increase the allowable density in that district.
Okay, all right. And can I address one more thing while I'm here?
Certainly.
He did mention the use for, you know, like elderly citizens and that type of thing. I recently, you know, pursued getting my elderly parents into a property, you know, that was safe for them, and it involves no stairs. That property's got a lot of stairs. So, looking at the pictures on the web and what I can find, I don't know that there is a ground level space, so I kind of have a hard time buying that argument a little bit, so. That's all I have, thanks.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions?
Could you,
Yes.
just to confirm the difference between the current, the R3 and the R7, so the setbacks are all the same? Is that, if I'm reading this correctly?
Yeah.
So if they were, so they're limited in, if they had the R7 now, they're limited to 5 units, they would be in the future. And even if they rebuilt, they would have to stay within setbacks that are the same as they are now.
Yeah, it's just limited by the size of the lot, is how many units.
Thanks.
Lots.
Lots. 2. Yeah.
And I guess there are 2 parcels here, but it is 1 zoning lot that we're talking about. So it's not 5 units per lot. It's a total of 5
Right.
units, okay.
Yeah. Anybody else? Questions? Ma'am?
Do you think that it's possible to get 5 units on, not in that building, but we're just talking about if it was bare ground, 5 units on that lot that would be not very tiny units?
I guess we haven't done that
Yeah,
analysis.
I know, I'm just, you know, thinking,
I think the main thing is parking on the site, you know, I mean, he's figuring that out, you know, but if you can.
How does the size of this double lot compare with the 5 townhomes across from Park Place that we approved?
I don't know.
Just
off-
curious.
Off the top of our head.
Just say
Or the
the
lot
other
on
lot
7th
was
Street.
bigger than the other one.
where we approved townhomes.
I don't know how much
across
bigger.
from Joseph's Deli.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah, when we, Stephen Chompy, again, Stephen Gary Chompy, when we started looking at the property in relation to what you're talking about, we modeled it after future development if everything in the world aligns correctly for us. If you look at possibly 7th and James, the Shody structure,
Right.
Exactly.
we actually have more square footage with our 2 lots than they have there. And I think most people would find that a fairly attractive addition to the community. Also, the newest property at Franklin and 7th, you know, the condominiums that align there where the library is going to go. And then also 4th and Campbell, where Midwest Homes is constructing those units.
Yeah.
If you look, he's putting 5 units on a smaller footprint than what we have. So when you look at the configuration or downtown, you'd see the other Shodine building by the railroad tracks and the parking garage. That's on a smaller footprint. So the rear access garage unit is something that, in the future, you know, but those structures cost probably at this point $1.5 million to build. So, so that's probably the biggest drawback as to why we're not doing it tomorrow. So, but in answer to what proportionate size property you need, any of those properties I mentioned would fit on this lot and would give you about 5 units. So, thank you.
Thank you.
What are your thoughts?
On the suitability of the site for R7?
Correct.
I think it can accommodate up to 5 units within the parameters of the zoning district. It is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. It is consistent with the city's housing plan, Homes for Changing Region plan that was adopted in 2014 to diversify our housing stock and find infill opportunities in transitional areas for these types of units.
Right.
Unless it's rezoned to a higher density, it probably will never have the market value to attract quality development. I would think.
I would agree.
Right. Nobody's gonna buy it as is for a single-family home. Nobody's gonna buy it to knock it down and rebuild a single-family home on that property.
Wouldn't you tear it down and build 2, because it's 2 lots? So you could have 2 single-family
Yeah, you
homes
could-
on 2
one on
different
each,
lots.
yes.
You could do that,
Could.
but I'm not sure, given the development that's occurred around that particular corner, how attractive it is as a location for a new single-family house.
Yeah, but you would have like a duplex there or something like that.
You might, or you might have 5 townhomes, just like, as we've discussed. I think for the reasons David has just stated, it feels like this is an appropriate R7 location. You gotta separate the fact that maybe we'll be staring at a mansard roof for the rest of its existence, which is unfortunate, but we can't control that, and we can't make a decision around that.
Live over there.
Close the public hearing. I think, I'd like to move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Celeste, please call the roll.
All right, Case.
Aye.
Jodish.
Aye.
Evans.
Aye.
Kasserag.
Aye.
Leidig.
Aye.
Mead.
Aye.
Slivka.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Stocking.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for a zoning map amendment to rezone the subject property at 304 East Side Drive from R3 medium to high-density single-family residential zoning district to R7 multiple family residential zoning district, subject to the findings of fact around the 4 zoning map amendment standards and as contained in the staff report.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Case.
We are voting on the amendment?
Yes.
Okay. Before I make my vote, I consider R7 too dense for this property. I would see R5, R4, maybe even R6, but R7 is too dense. Therefore, I vote no.
Jodish.
I actually agree with Fred's sentiments on that as well, so I vote no.
Okay. Evans.
Aye.
Kasserag.
Aye.
Leidig.
if the building was gone and there was something better there that I could look at, I would consider it, but as of
Cindy,
now,
I would really caution you not to make your decision based on the aesthetics of the existing building. That is not one of the standards the commission should be considering.
then no.
Mead,
Aye.
Slivka,
Aye.
Stevenson,
No.
Stocking.
Nay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nays. Fail. 3, 4 yeses.
Okay. Motion failed.
Fail.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
not open to discussion or anything, but as we are well aware that with the Plan Commission, we are a recommending body only.
Oh, yes,
It still has to go before the City Council and the Committee of the Whole.
correct.
So this will advance to committee of the whole on March 26th, 2018. That meeting will be at 7 PM in this room.
Thank you very much. Okay, next item on the agenda. It's a review and recommendation session for the public hearing that was held on February 22nd, 2018. For the Geneva Public Library, the request is for a zoning ordinance text amendment to Chapter 9, Plan Unit Developments, Special and Preliminary Final Plan Unit Development Approval. For a public library in a R3 medium and high-density, single-family residential district. Location is the southwest corner of South 7th Street and Campbell Street. The applicant is the Geneva Public Library District. I would emphasize at this time that the public hearing portion of this item has been closed, so there will be no public comment, further public comment on this item. After the vote, there is an ability to speak to the commission in a general session, but as far as considering the merits of this proposal at this time, there is no additional public input.
Mr. Chairman, when we left last time, we decided to take a couple weeks to benefit from digesting what we heard from the public and from the applicant and from our fellow commissioners, and I think that was wise. I think we have a couple things that I wanted to bring up that we were considering at the time. I think you had a little bit of an issue with the FAR request, and I was countering that a little bit, saying that I think that the other criteria we get to vote on for variances, as in height, lot coverage, setback. I thought that was sufficient, as I think was suggested by the staff's report, that we could control a property's mass without necessarily having the FAR restriction. So I find myself thinking that way, that's like a lot of other communities, they don't have that. So I'm still okay with the FAR restriction going away, but never would I be okay with the other things that allow us to control mass in and of itself being altered.
My only comment on that is that it's an additional tool in the toolbox. So from my point of view, given Geneva and the unique character of this community, the staff has right in the staff report when they're saying the FAR basically controls the building volume within the parameters of the thing. That's absolutely correct.
Right.
However, that said, there's still, without having any kind of cap, let's say, to that, it's given to the staff and the planning commission's discretion, which, again, 20 years from now, I don't know what the pressures are gonna be like. I don't know who's gonna be sitting in these seats.
Right.
So that's my only caveat. I think overall, yes, the PUD definitely allows us to do whatever we need to do to mitigate negative effects. But I just wanted other commissioners to consider that in terms of, because guys, it's all the tools of the toolbox. Sometimes that tool may be the difference in terms of saying yes or no on a particular thing. The only other thing I would comment on that is that, just one second, let me finish the comment, and then you can certainly speak. Is that, by setting that standard, the city's basically saying, you know, we're looking for buildings of a certain character within the residential context of Geneva, which gives it this unique character downtown, right? So those are my main
Right.
concerns. I think, can we control things in a PUD process? Definitely. But again, so I just wanted to hear what other people had to say about it.
If we
really.
felt as a body that we were not comfortable with eliminating the FAR restriction, how does that affect the ability to allow this PUD as requested?
I think, again, as a recommending body, you would still vote on all three items before you tonight, which would be the text amendment, the special use, and then the PUD.
Right. So the PUD and the library development could still go forward even if we had an FAR restriction within our,
Well, again, because you're a recommending body, so the
Correct.
code is not changed until the city council would adopt removing that restriction.
I guess another way to put it is, can the PUD be approved if there is this overall FAR restriction, is what I'm
As
asking.
it is today, it would not meet that standard.
Right.
Yeah. Sydney?
Because I'm very uncomfortable getting rid of the FAR. I mean, you have to have FAR as a planner to deal with density. I don't want to see that gone.
The text amendment is not proposing to remove the FAR regulations from our zoning districts. It's proposing to eliminate the amount of deviation from those standards that the Plan Commission and City Council are able to grant. So right now, it's restricted to 20%, a maximum of 20% increase in a PUD from the underlying zoning. This would remove that restriction and allow the commission to consider any percentage increase over the standard, but the standard itself would remain.
And we would still have the right to
okay.
refuse that.
Right,
Yeah.
on an individual PUD basis. So if we
so-
voted in the affirmative to eliminate the restriction, we still would deal with FAR on
Right.
every
Yes.
PUD.
Correct.
Yes.
So I think, maybe, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, I'm not trying to. Maybe I am, but I'm not trying to. Your concern is with eliminating that, you don't want to eliminate FAR per se, but you want to be able to use FAR as a tool going forward, which we still would be able to do, right?
We
The way-
still would be able to technically, yes, we still would be able to do.
We would just
but
not
it's
have a cap, we
restriction.
would say,
Yeah.
hey, this is 40% above the FAR, this is 60%. How do we
Correct.
feel about that in relationship to the other variances being requested and stuff?
Correct.
So I
And in a residential district, I guess, then that's the kind of the thing within the R3.
Right,
That's
right.
the kind of thing like
Right.
we're talking about around the surrounding downtown area, which is where we're gonna
Right.
see the pressures.
So I'd be comfortable with this, but I now appreciate what you were saying in a different way, so.
And there, again, we can address FAR via other methods within the PUD parameters. It is possible to do. I'm not saying you can't do it.
Well, and there's still an
Definitely
FAR
can do it.
restriction, we're just
Yep.
consciously allowing some level of variance each and every time if there is one.
Correct.
Right.
Right. We're granting more flexibility
Yes.
on any future project that comes in.
Yes, Mike.
So it sounds like the fear that we have here is that we're kind of, loosening the belt on the restrictions a bit. Would we always have so let's say a developer were to come in and say, hey, I want to put this is way out there, but, a small shopping mall in a residential area. Would we always be able to fall back on the fact, nope, if you're coming here with something that is not for profit and, essentially a library, very different story. But if it falls outside of that, no, we always have it to fall back on. We made an exception one time because it was A, B, C, and D. Anything outside of that,
Well, it's always by the particulars of the PUD.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, each PUD is different. So, I mean, again, whether it's a public-private use, that may or may not, that's up to the commissioners to kind of do that. But it's just the basic parameters of the design and layout of the development. That's what's before us, and then we're trying to help mitigate and try to figure out how best to fit it and whether it fits. So that's really what it is. And you certainly can do it through setbacks and other height restrictions and other things that you have mechanisms in the PUD.
Right.
Again, it's just another tool. If the tool leaves, it's not the end of the day.
we're not opening the floodgates.
Yeah, it's not the end of the day.
Again, we're not getting rid of the tool, we're getting rid of our ability to allow variance to the tool.
Right.
Right.
Which I think is, and again, also sending a message to folks that would be proposing that
We
it's
might have to
basically,
do
this
it,
is a
yeah.
cap, and there's a reason why we did the cap.
We
So-
might have to deal with more requests for variance and on their own merits at the time, right?
Right. So, I mean, I guess we could always see how things go on that, right? So if we don't wind up with proposals that are crazy, then we're probably
Right.
okay.
I think we also are always subject to another petition to remove that cap, too.
Correct, that could always be another thing.
We saw this request with the Marquette project, and now again with the
True.
library, project.
Yeah.
I think to Commissioner Jadush's point, consider the request that's before you tonight. Do you think that this is a reasonable consideration as a planned unit development with the FAR that is
Right.
proposed?
Right.
Right.
And if you don't, because it exceeds that 20% cap, you would not like to see this much deviation come before you for consideration, then
Yeah. The example you made is perfect
I'll-
on Marquette. I mean, it was clear.
Right.
It's just FAR, it's just not gonna fly on that project at all.
Right.
I mean, it's just not, the merits were not there to grant any relief on that.
Right.
Could the cap be reinstituted at a later date? Or a different cap?
Sure. If we find we get a lot of proposals
it
coming
became
in
a
that we're
problem-
constantly up against it, and then it's like, oh, well, maybe we should send the message again. So I'm not saying, again, you never know. It's just, again, it's a tool. It's just another tool in the mix.
So we would still have a FAR consideration. We just wouldn't be going against the 20%
Correct.
bar.
Yeah, right,
20%'s gonna go away,
right.
but we'll look at it
So there's
every
no-
time.
Correct.
Yeah.
We're always gonna look at it.
Right, right.
Always.
We don't lose the tool, we just lose the guideline.
We just
to-
lose the ability
to
to.
not to exceed.
Not to exceed.
But then aren't we letting the genie out of the bottle?
No, because it's up to us to decide it at the end of the day, and council at final, so, it's, again, I think there was a reason why it was put in there, and I don't know if you guys did the history on that, but I think there was a reason behind it. And from my perspective, the character of the community, the fact that that's what people like about Geneva is the residential scale of the buildings downtown. That's what makes Geneva what it is, yes.
Obviously, it's a concern here. Does it make sense to, if we need to loosen the belt a bit in order to, whatever we decide here, I mean, to, I guess, make a motion then for next meeting or a month from here to go back to what the original setting was essentially? That way it's locked down and we don't have to worry about it. You'd mentioned if it becomes an issue going forward, 3 or 4 times where, we have.
Yeah, again, I'm fine with that.
That's it right there.
I'm fine, I just wanted to let the commission talk about it and think about it before we
Yep.
made a motion on it. And then that's really it. I mean, if we take the cap off it, I'm still fine. We can still deal with it in other ways.
Right.
We have the ability to deal with projects that
Right.
come in overscaled. We can deal with it. Yes.
Well, couldn't we approve this and leave the FAR alone?
Not the
No.
cap, because it
Because that's
exceeds
what
it.
the cap does.
It's about
So-
33 or 34% above the FAR. It's .63 versus .48.
correct.
So whatever 15 over 48 is,
Yeah.
Something like 50, 53.
about 32, 33%.
Yeah,
Right in the ballpark.
yes, ma'am.
I think in this particular instance, we do need to think about the merits of this particular project and whether or not we want to not have this project go forward or go forward in a way that best serves the needs of the entire community because of this particular restriction, if that's the better decision for the welfare of the entire community, is to keep a cap in place that is going to make an improvement to the community that the community is overwhelmingly in favor of, and a location that the community has supported as that location. Sometimes there's justification for changing the rules
Right.
because of the value of the project itself.
Agreed.
Yes, Brett.
I just want to say thank you, first of all, for patience and putting this off for a couple weeks. It really helped my conscience feel better about how I'm going to vote today. But I do want to say that, in looking through there, and I talked to staff a little bit about it, there is a little concern, kind of minorly pointed out in there about traffic at 7th and State. It was downgraded, a grade down, and as you think about it more, it kind of makes sense, especially when we talk about meetings being there and funneling out. I mean, that's kind of the main area to funnel out. And, you know, I don't know, it's a short block between the stoplight and one block back. So I'm not saying this is a deal breaker. I agree with Mim that this is an important project that the community supported, but I do want to just bring it up that one thing did come out of my consideration over the last couple weeks.
There was a second point that we had some discussion on the inclusion of highly visible crosswalks as a condition. The staff talks about them. They've given us some new additional information for this week's packet. I personally would like to see those because of the amount of children and all sorts of people that'll be walking, biking, and everything to this. I would like to include that in the motion as a condition for the approval of the third point. So,
Yeah.
and just
It makes sense.
if that makes sense to everybody else, I will include that if I make the motion. So,
Please,
Please do.
please do.
beyond that, I didn't have anything else to.
I don't have anything further. Yes?
As far as the traffic goes, where the library currently is, there's kind of traffic there.
Kinda? Oh, yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, parking alone is,
just thought I'd let you know there's traffic.
yep, the parking alone is a big one.
This is not a solution now, but I'm hopeful that someday when old Citron site is developed, we might still have the potential to extend 7th Street north of 38. That doesn't solve us today, there's no guarantees, but that someday could happen
That is a dream.
as a further traffic relief.
Any other comments, concerns?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. There'll be 3 separate motions. I'd like to make a motion for a zoning ordinance text amendment to Chapter 9, Plan Unit Development, specifically to Section 11-9-9A2, bulk incentives and open space, to remove the maximum floor area limitation for planned unit developments, subject to the findings of fact in the staff report.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Celeste?
This is Case.
Aye.
Jadish.
Aye.
Evans.
Aye.
Kasserag.
Aye.
Leidig.
Aye.
Mead.
Aye.
Slivka.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Stocking.
Aye.
Carries.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for a special use for a public library in the R3 medium to high-density, single-family residential district, subject to the findings of fact related to the 9 special use standards and as contained in the staff report.
Second.
Did you want to include your
I
crosswalks?
think that'll come with the planned unit
Was it a
development
plan?
approval.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Right, you seconded.
Then
Okay.
seconded, moved and seconded?
Case.
Aye.
Jadish.
Aye.
Evans.
Aye.
Kasserag.
Aye.
Leidig.
Aye.
Mead.
Aye.
Slivka.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Stocking.
Aye.
Carries.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for a preliminary final plan unit development approval for a 57,312 square foot public library building, 76 off-street parking spaces and associated site improvements, subject to the findings of fact as contained in the staff report, and further subject to the 4 conditions of final engineering approval shall be approved prior to building permit issuance by the city. Second, the applicant shall restripe the current 21 on-street Franklin Street diagonal spaces to be perpendicular parking spaces as indicated on the proposed site plan. Third, a revised landscape plan shall be submitted which resolves conflicts with existing utilities. And 4, installation of high visibility crosswalks as outlined in the staff report.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Case.
Aye.
Jodish.
Aye.
Evans.
Aye.
Esserug.
Aye.
Leidig.
Aye.
Mead.
Aye.
Slivka.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Stocking.
Aye. Good. And it goes to council.
Committee of the whole on
You know,
That goes to committee of the whole on March 26th. It's a Monday, 7 PM in this room with a affirmative recommendation.
Okay. Thank you very much.
other business.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
My name is Bob Schiffler, 1105 Ashbury Court, and I'm president of the Geneva Public Library District Board of Trustees. And on behalf of the board, I'd just like to thank you for the support you've shown tonight for this important community project. And we are more than happy to pay for the high visibility crosswalk. So again, thank you very much for your support and positive recommendation going forward to the council. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
I just let you know, everybody, that we have noticed for the March 22nd, I'm sorry, what is it, March 22nd meeting?
Yeah.
And that will be Delnor is asking for a plan unit development amendment for their parking ratio. So they've done some parking studies and would like to present their findings as far as what they think is an appropriate ratio.
What was
And
the
then-
date? What was the date, Paul?
March 22nd.
I will not be here.
Oh,
I'll
okay.
be absent.
You won't be Fred?
There's two.
And Brad, okay, all right. Is there anybody else? I mean,
I'm good.
This is March 22nd.
March 22nd.
May 22nd, I'm going to a Cub
Yeah,
game.
March 22nd.
March 22nd.
So, and then the
March.
second one is they're gonna have a surgery center. They would like to do a site plan, they're gonna submit a site plan for the surgery center expansion, which is on the west side of the hospital.
Oh, wow, okay,
Oh, that's good.
Okay.
great.
Well, how about the C-Tron project?
We're still working with them on it. At this point, it could be in April. You know, we're still trying to get them ready.
They are scheduled to go to the Historic Preservation Commission on March 20th. The townhome portion of that development is in the Historic District and just the townhome portion. So that will be reviewed by HPC in March. They're really doing a lot of for their due diligence work on utility locations, site improvements, just trying to make sure everything works, and it's a really a feasible project. So they would like to move as quickly as possible, and the earliest would be April.
Be what, May?
April.
April, okay.
And I sent out an update yesterday through the Development Maps project. I don't know if you caught it, but the proposal has changed a little bit. They've increased from 12 apartments to 20 apartments, but reduced the townhomes from 8 to 6. The townhome site was really just too tight for 8 units to make it work, so they made those
The
adjustments.
apartments are all above retail?
Correct.
Okay. Good.
Very nice.
That will be a pleasure to entertain.
Yes.
Are you looking for the mayor?
We are.
Downstairs, if you can go out the stairs, it's okay.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right.
Funny.
Enter the
Open
First
door,
Street
you
side of the
come in.
building.
So that was going on.
I'm so fired now, I'm telling them.
Should have sent him the other
Is this a
direction.
scavenger
Yeah.
hunt?
Scavenger hunt, and you gotta get a selfie with the mayor.
Oh,
They have to
that's
take
what
a
we heard
selfie.
yeah.
Selfie with a
Yeah,
plan
you're
commissioner
definitely
doesn't do.
I guess you can say to the mayor, see if it works.
No, thanks.
The man of the people, I like it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right.
Move to adjourn.
Take a selfie with
Second.
the mayor.